Hi friends, my name is Vivekanandan. I am student of Sri Venkateswara College of Engineering, Bangalore. In this video, I am going to discuss about comparison of different types of operating systems. Contains what is operating system, types of desktop operating system, types of mobile operating system, comparison between the mobile and desktop operating systems, conclusion of desktop operating systems and mobile operating systems. Now let's see first what is operating system. An operating system can be defined as a program that acts as an intermediary between a user and the computer hardware. It interfaces with the application software and BIOS in order to permit applications to interact with the computer hardware. Now let's see types of desktop OS. First, Windows OS. Second, Mac OS. Third, Linux OS. Now let's see Windows OS. Introduction of Windows OS. Microsoft Windows was announced by Bill Gates on November 10, 1983. Microsoft Windows, also called Windows or Windows OS, is a computer operating system developed by Microsoft Corporation to run personal computers, featuring the first graphical user interface for IBM compatible PC. The Windows OS soon dominated the PC market. The first version of Windows, released in 1985, was simply a GUI offered as an extension of Microsoft Exiting Disk Operating System, or MS-DOS. Now let's see evolution of Windows OS. It starting from version Windows 1 is released in the year 1985 and so on. Now the current stable version is Windows 11 and it released in the year 2021. Here we have all the versions of Windows. Now let's see advantages and disadvantages of Windows OS. Advantages of Windows OS. Windows supports all hardware. It is easy to use. Windows has a large range of software. It has a comprehensive drive support. It has a plug and play feature. Windows has backward compatibility. Now disadvantages of Windows OS. Windows is not an open source operating system. It has a high amount of virus attack. It is expensive. It requires a reboot when performance is slow. Need a system update for a longer period. Windows need high resources requirement. Let's see Mac OS. Introduction of Mac OS. Mac OS is the original proprietary operating system of Apple, the company founded by Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and Ronald Wayne in 1976. Although they are early operating system associated with Apple. Apple computers, the first official reference to Mac OS, came with the public beta release version known as Kodak. At Mac OS Core is a POSAC compliant operating system built on top of the XNU kernel with standard Unix facilities available from the command line interface. Apple has released this software as free and open source operating system named Draven. On top of that Draven, Apple layered a number of components, including the Aqua interface and the Finder to complete the GUI based operating system, which is Mac OS. Within the market of desktop and laptop computers, it is the second most widely used desktop OS after Microsoft Windows and ahead of Linux, including Chrome OS. The first desktop version Mac OS X 10.0 was released in March 2001. Here we have a versions of Mac OS. It's starting from version Mac OS X 10.0 Cheetah is released in the year 2001 and so on. Now current stable version is Mac OS 13 Ventura and it released in the year 2022. Let's see advantages of Mac OS. Simple but powerful user interface, fewer viruses and other security issues, seamless integration between OS and hardware, comes preloaded with productive apps, effective and unparalleled multitasking feature, integration with other Apple products, limited device so faster updates. It is a powerhouse in the hardware department. Better environment for videographers and animators. Appeals to many people. Now, disadvantages of Mac OS. Mac computers are considerably expensive, inflexible when it comes to hardware upgrades, lack of game titles and advanced gaming experience. The app ecosystem is still lackluster. Now let's see Linux OS. What is Linux OS? Linux is a free Unix type operating system originally created by Linus Torvalds and developed under the GNU General Public License, whose source code is freely available to everyone. History of Linux. Linux was originally built by Linus Torvalds at the University of Helsinki in 1991. Linux was built based on Unix. It is an open source operating system. It is free software, source code available to all. It runs on wide range of hardware from PCs, servers to even Raspberry Pi. Now let's see advantages and disadvantages of Linux OS. Advantages. Linux is an open source operating system. On Linux, no antivirus software is needed. The command prompt in Linux is very advanced. It needs less space on the disk. It is very stable and free. Linux is less vulnerable to computer malware. In Linux, no reboot is needed. Now, disadvantages of Linux OS. Some hardware drives are not available for Linux users. Limited software availability. Graphical interface is not good enough in Linux. Poor support for games. Most Windows software will not run in Linux. No standard desktop environment. It has a poor support issues. Let's see mobile operating system. In mobile operating system, we are going to see Android and iOS. Let's see first Android OS. Android is a Linux-based operating system designed primarily for mobile devices such as smartphones and tablets. Android OS consists of a shell and a kernel part. Create of Android takes out the kernel from the Linux OS 2.6 and rewrite the shell part using the Java that forms Android OS. Android was developed as an advanced operating system for digital cameras. There are more than 4 lakh apps in Android market and Android is an open source. Origin of Android. Android was found in Palo Alto, California in October 2003 by Andy Rubin, Rich Miner, Nick Sears, Chris White, who works at Google to develop. Android was purchased by the Google in August 2005 for $50 million. HTC Dream was the first Android device launched in September 2008. Now Android covers 90% of the mobile OS market. Here we have versions of Android. It's starting from 1.0 to 1.1. is released in the year 2008, and so on. Now the current stable version is Android 13 is released in the year 2022. Let's see iOS. iOS is a mobile operating system developed by Apple. It is the world's second most widely installed mobile operating system after Android. It is the basis for three other operating systems made by Apple: iPad OS, tvOS, and watchOS. Unveiled in 2007 for the first generation iPhone, iOS has since been extended to support other Apple devices such as the iPod Touch, September 2007. Apple App Store contains more than 2.1 million iOS applications, 1 million of which are native for iPads. Major versions of iOS are released annually. The current stable version, iOS 16, was released to the public on September 12, 2022. Here we have all the versions of iOS. It's starting from version iPhone OS 1 is released in the year 2007, and so on. Now the current stable version is iOS 16, and it released in the year 2022. Now let's see comparison between the mobile and desktop operating systems. Definition: in mobile operating system, it is a type of operating system that allows application software to operate on mobile devices. In desktop operating system, it is the environment in which a user handles a personal computer. Memory requirement: in mobile operating system, it needs minimum RAM to optimize. In desktop operating system, it needs huge memory to operate. Storage: in mobile operating system, it uses a flash drive to store the data. In desktop operating system, it uses a hard drive and flash drive to store data. Boot time: in mobile operating system, it takes less time to boot. In desktop operating system, it takes much time to boot. Purpose: in mobile operating system, it handles cellular and wireless connectivity and device accesses. In desktop operating system, it handles the software and hardware resources of the system. Power: in mobile operating system, it optimized to work under minimal power needs and has a feature to prevent energy losses. In desktop operating system, it is not readily optimized for energy loss. Interface: in mobile operating system, it runs on touch screen or touchpad devices. In desktop operating system, it runs through many input devices including mouse and keyboard, etc. Example: in mobile operating system, some example of the mobile OS are Apple iOS, Google Android, Bada, Palm OS, Symbian OS, Windows Mobile OS, BlackBerry OS, iPhone OS, Harmony OS, Web OS, etc. In desktop operating system, some example of the desktop OS are Windows 10, Mac OS, Windows Vista, etc. Now let's see conclusion of desktop operating systems and mobile operating systems. Desktop operating system require more powerful hardware components and provide a more complex user interface that enables multitasking and running more demanding software applications. In contrast, mobile operating systems require less powerful hardware components, having a simplified touch-based user interface, limited multitasking capabilities, and limited app availability. Thank you.